The predictors are right and housing does run out of steam. The big four banks could face an income shock. Last week, Citibank predicted property prices may fall as much as 7%, with apartments in the big cities bearing the brunt. Coupled with low wage growth and a soft economy, the real question for the banks and their shareholders is where is growth going to come from? Here's Andrew Robertson.
No one doubts the big banks remain in great shape, but dig beneath the surface and there are signs of tougher times ahead. At ANZ, for example, profit was up 6%, but in a story more familiar with department stores than banks, revenue was down.
Our concern is how do we continue to grow revenue in a more subdued environment? When household income is more stagnant, how do we grow?
And just as the tougher economic times are starting to bite at the banks, come signs that their favourite source of income could soon also be under stress.
Sold.
In the most recent data for April, house prices in Sydney stalled. Melbourne was up 0.5%, while Canberra fell 3%. And last week, investment bank Citi predicted overall house prices may fall up to 7% in the next 12 months.
The banks are resilient and they're soundly capitalised. A significant correction in the property market would no doubt put a dent in their profitability.
And this is why. The big banks may not like the comparison, but they have many similarities to old-fashioned building societies, the chief one being their reliance on home lending for their earnings. All four are addicted to housing. At CBA, Westpac and NAB, it's about 2/3 of the loan book. At ANZ, it's more than half. Despite having so many of their eggs in the one basket, Patterson Securities economic strategist Tony Farnham is not predicting doom and gloom yet.
But I would say overall that for our Australian housing market to fall significantly, and I'm talking the owner-occupier part obviously here as the central point, it has to be a massive recession occurring in the Australian market.
But investors are now a much bigger part of the housing market, in overheated Sydney reaching 50% of all new loans, with the banks under pressure from regulators to cut that figure.
If we do have investment housing fall away, and that's what everyone's trying to do, APRA with macroprudential controls and the like, if that does occur, that slack has to be filled up in some other way, and the logical way is more lending to small and medium enterprise businesses.
While that's the theory, fund manager Steve Johnson thinks the reality could be very different.
The size of the mortgage market in Australia relative to our economy is larger than anywhere in the world, and it is impossible for other parts of the economy to take up the slack there.
The reason, according to Steve Johnson, is that home lending and bank lending are not the same.
They can lend 80 and 90% of the value of houses. They would never lend that much money against a business or a different asset class.
Notwithstanding that, the head of the nation's biggest lender to business, NAB boss Andrew Thorburn, is more upbeat.
What we need is business investment and business growth, because that creates jobs and creates more wealth for the economy. So we do need that. We need business owners to sort of see the opportunities and start to back themselves and their innovation and their IP and start to expand.
However, in an economy where unemployment is stubbornly high, for the banks that could be wishful thinking.